The content, views, and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the City of Bremerton, BCAT, their officials, or their employees. Hello, this is Mark Miller once again on Bremerton Kitsap Access Television with the Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers Author and Creative Showcase. I have a returning author with me today and also a film creator by the name of Mark Allen, and we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of different subjects, including his experiences at Crypticon. Thanks for coming by again.
Thank you for having me.
So, first of all, as you notice, we have all new lights in here now. BCAT's managed to get the funding and everything, and so things should look brighter and everything. And so
it looks great.
Yes. So hopefully we won't break the new lighting and cameras and everything here as we're here with our old faces and everything. But let's start out with Crypticon, and you can explain what Crypticon was and is.
Crypticon essentially is the largest horror culture convention on the West Coast. Crypticon, the organization, has them in various places in the country, and there's one in Colorado, there's one in Minneapolis, and there's one on the East Coast too, and I can't remember exactly where that one is. But we had just incredible writers and comic book artists, graphic novel artists. We had people that had worked on The Simpsons and Futurama there. Had all kinds of indie authors like myself, which was great because I got to meet some of the people who I know online and whose work I respect, but I'd never had a chance to meet them in real life. So that was nice.
How long has Crypticon been in existence?
It's been going on for a long time. I mean, I knew about it when I was still living in San Diego before I even got cancer. So we're talking, that was 15 years ago.
Okay.
So it's been around a while.
So it's been probably at least 30 to 40 years. Probably got started in the 80s and stuff when there was a big expansion of television and cable television, all that jazz and everything.
Yeah.
So you have a new book that you presented there.
Yes.
Because as you can tell, everybody can see on the screen, you definitely write horror. And he has a new book over here now. If you want to talk about this one, Alpha Male.
Alpha Male is the book that came out about 3 weeks ago. Is still sitting on the Amazon bestseller list for new releases, horror and suspense. Good. Now, it's not in the top 100 anywhere else.
Yeah.
But it's the top 100 there. When it came out, it debuted at number 16. It wound up going up to around number 14. And then it has slowly over time started to drift back down. I think this morning I was at like number 36 or 38 or something like that. But it seems to be growing legs. Right. And when I say that, I mean that it looks like it's going to have some staying power rather than be a quick flash in the pan and then it drops out of sight and everyone forgets about it. This looks like it's going to be on the list for a while, which is very gratifying to me because it means people are picking it up and reading it.
Right. You've been in the horror business for a while because I know you made some films back in the early 2000s, independent horror films.
Yeah.
And of course, I got to know you because you started out with your book series through Claw, and you have your nice vampire series, which put a complete new spin on being a vampire, as far as I'm concerned. But now you have a werewolf series. And I guess the question I would have is, what made you decide then to go from the vampire to the werewolf, other than just the normal idea because they're all connected to horror?
The werewolf, that character, the archetype werewolf, has always held a special place in my heart. You know, I can remember being, 5, 6, 7 years old, sitting at home in small town East Texas, watching Lon Chaney Jr. turn into the Wolfman on television on Friday nights. And there's always been something about the dual nature of the character, which of course you can expand out to be talking about the dual nature of man himself, and how those two things are constantly pulling us in different directions, and how it can cause a certain level of stress and anguish in your life, especially if you have a moral compass and you're trying to do the right thing. That's where it gets interesting for me.
You do your own book covers.
So far I have, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you have I would say you have a good artistic eye because they're very eye-catching, they're very original. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that I see out there in a lot of people with their books is they think they can use stock photos and just, put them on there. But you've gone to the point of, you look at all these nice little, the vampire one, the first Nocturnal and everything, it's a horror book.
Yes.
Which a lot of authors don't realize that you need to be able to tell people what your genre is from the very beginning.
I believe in truth in advertising.
Yeah.
In fact, I was talking to one of my fellow authors about this very thing at Crypticon, and he was complaining how so many of the mainstream, traditionally published horror novels have generic covers that do not indicate the nature of the work inside. Plain lettering, a colored background, maybe some swirls of another color in there, and I understand why they're doing that. The traditional publishing marketing departments don't want to narrow it to the horror niche.
Yeah.
Because they want people to pick it up and buy it.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I just don't agree with it. I want people to know the minute they see one of these covers, they will know exactly, precisely what they're getting into when they buy one of my novels.
Exactly.
I do not believe in deceiving anyone.
And I don't, and it's funny that the industry is doing that because they don't seem to realize that people get irritated when they pick a book up and they think it's one thing and they flip it over and they read the back and they go, wait a minute, that has nothing to do with the cover. And they put it down like, we're not going to notice that.
Yeah. The great thing about being an indie author is that I'm in total, complete control of every aspect, for better or for worse. I'm in control of everything, and for better or for worse, it's my name on the book, not anyone else's. So I want the work I do to be a completely unfiltered vision, my vision of what the story should be. No one tells me what to write. And again, for better or for worse, whether I hit or I miss, I can live with it and I can hold my head high because I did, like the old Frank Sinatra song, I did it my way.
Yeah. We mentioned the original werewolf movie with Lon Chaney Jr., who, as far as I was concerned, kind of set the tone for every other movie that anybody's ever made since then. And Lon Chaney Jr. created that angst in the character who becomes the werewolf, and like you said, that internal conflict. So I'm assuming that you do the same thing with your character, and kind of compare and contrast with how Lon Chaney did it and how and with your character.
Well, he's my main character, Caleb Jacobson.
Yeah.
He is the reluctant hero.
Right.
He doesn't want to be a hero. He's a lone wolf. At the beginning of the first book, he's a lone wolf. He's not a member of a pack, has never been a member of a pack, doesn't want to be a member of the pack.
Yeah.
But he gets pulled into a certain chain of events where he has to alter his vision of how his life is going to go. And he's still the reluctant hero in the second book, where he has to do the very thing that he does not want to do. The last thing he wants to do is to assume control, to rise to the position of alpha male for the global pack. Because in my novels, all of the small local and regional werewolf packs have become united under one global alpha,
Right.
who controls the entire global pack. And he doesn't want to be alpha. The problem is that he doesn't have much of a choice. He has to be.
Right.
And so that's where I pull in that angst, because he doesn't hate being a werewolf the way Lawrence Talbot was in the Lon Chaney movies, but his eyes are open. He sees the good and the bad of it.
Okay.
Which is why he's so reluctant to turn others.
In your vampire books, I know, like I said, you did a twist in the whole vampire thing, because you go into quite details about the fact that a vampire has to literally reanimate every single
night.
single night when they come out, when they wake back up, almost like being recreated, and it's a very painful process.
Yes.
So when you explained the process of becoming a werewolf, how's that kind of compare and contrast?
I talk about it more in Alpha Male than I did in Blood Red Moon, but it is a painful process because bones are breaking and reforming and reattaching, and it's a painful process, but it's very quick. They go from man to wolf in about 15 seconds. It does not take very long. But yeah, it's painful. They just, over time, they know the pain is coming, and they learn how to
just do it. Yeah.
They learn how to deal with it, and they know it's coming, and they know what it's going to be, and it's just like, I'm going to do it anyway.
I actually think Lon Chaney Jr. was a very unappreciated actor, and he actually did played Lenny in one of the early Mice and Men, which I think was probably one of the best Lenny's ever done. But he unfortunately became stereotyped as a werewolf, in all these horror films and stuff like that, even though he was a heck of an actor. So if you were going to then try to make a movie based on your werewolf, what kind of person would you be looking for to be the title character?
He would have to be a little more than average height, 5'8", 5'9". Would need to have a bit longer hair,
Yeah.
beard. Would have to work out because there's lots of nudity in my werewolf series. My werewolves take off their clothes before they change.
Oh, okay.
And
that's something nobody ever talks about.
And they have absolutely no shame or self-consciousness about their own naked bodies. It's just simply a non-issue.
Okay.
And that's true for both the males and the females. It's just, oh, I'm going to change. Well, take the clothes off, because otherwise all the clothes are going to rip off their bodies. And then when they're done and change back to human, they don't have anything to put on.
Which was a question about the old Hulk. Yeah.
Right. So it's just a very practical matter for them. It's part of how their minds change as they're going through their turning.
How I know there's always the full moon concept, but how much of a warning do they get that they're about to change?
Well, see, a lot of them can, if they're werewolves long enough, they can change at will.
Oh, okay. Good.
But the other thing is extreme emotion, extreme anger, extreme fear will trigger a change, whether they actually want it or not.
Oh, okay.
The other thing is, as I explain in the book, their control over the change is not absolute. It never is. Because if they choose to stay in human form for too long, the virus that has mutated their DNA will build up to such a concentration in their blood that it will spontaneously trigger a change.
Okay.
You know, I based the virus on two viruses that actually exist in real life. One was the herpes virus, which it builds up, and an extreme emotional state can cause you to break out with fever blisters or canker sores, which is something I know a little bit about.
Yeah.
And the other one that I kind of use a little bit of influence is HIV,
Right.
the human immunovirus. Because this condition can be sexually transmitted.
Okay. That's also unique.
And the other thing is children can be born with it.
Oh.
So if you have a werewolf and a human have a child, that child has about a 50-50 chance of being born a werewolf.
Okay.
Because of the parents' mutated DNA, right? If two werewolves have a child,
Right.
you've got like a 99.9% chance that child is born a werewolf.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because you were a medical corpsman in the Navy and have a pretty extensive medical background, you were able to draw on that and then come up with all these details that you don't see in the movies. It's
Right.
always the full moon or getting bitten and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you managed, once again, you put a different spin
Right.
on the original idea.
And I put a psychological spin in there too that I go into more in this book than I did in the first one, about not only does their physicality change, if they're thin when they start, they wind up gaining weight and putting on muscle. And they're not, it's not like they're going to the gym. This is just what happens. If someone happens to be chubby or overweight, they will lose body fat as they gain muscle. They have an incredibly increased lifespan, so they age very, very slowly.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But of course, they can still be killed.
Right.
Now, the full moon and everything, I think I say it somewhere in one of the books that one of the reasons that they like hunting under a full moon,
Yeah.
more light,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, the psychological aspects of it too, you know, becoming this kind of creature with all this power. What do you do with that kind of power?
Yeah.
What do you do with that kind of ability? And those are questions that's a recurring theme in all of my books, because both my vampire and my werewolf have moral compasses.
Right.
And once I curse them with that moral compass, I'm dropping them into situations where they have to make moral decisions,
Right.
where they know what they need to do in order to be good men.
Yeah.
But as in real life, the right thing to do is very often the most difficult thing to do, and it's the last thing that we want to do.
Right.
So
We're getting toward the end of the interview, and one quick question is, what do you see as your next book? Is it going to be vampires or werewolves, or something entirely different?
the next novel will be the third book in my werewolf trilogy that's going to bring the story to a close.
Okay.
And once I'm done with that, I do plan to write another vampire novel, but it's a
Right.
few years down the road. I want to
Okay.
give that character some time to
Right.
rest. I have an idea for a Bigfoot novel,
Oh, okay,
Sasquatch
cool. There we
novel.
go.
And again, I've been reading a lot of Bigfoot novels,
Right.
and I'm finding the stuff that I don't want to
Exactly.
do. Not that there's anything wrong with the other books out there, there's not. But I want to approach it from a fundamentally
Once again,
different
something Okay.
different approach.
I just been told by the BCAT people that we're getting close to our time frame, so I'm going to go
Okay.
ahead and interview here. But I'm glad you could make it again, Mark, and come back again. And I really,
Anytime.
like I said, I love seeing you have some of the more interesting book covers. And that's one of the things that Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers is all about, of course, is we like to bring authors in here and other creatives to be able to show their abilities in the old artistic world. Not only writing, but also, of course, creating visuals on book covers, paintings, film, you name it. Kitsap Literary Artists and Writers exists to help all of you creatives and artisans out there in the broadcast area. We don't charge your dues. We meet twice a month, the first and third Wednesdays. We're meeting at the Denny's over there off of Kitsap Way now. And we just get together and we try to help each other, and we try to talk about, share with our experiences, with our horror stories in the industry and things like that. So new authors know that they can come in and they can just start writing, or new creatives of any type can come in. Thanks to Bremerton Kitsap Access Television, I'm able to broadcast this show, and it's on Comcast Channel 12 and Wave Cable Channel 3, though they do now have a digital channel, which I think is Channel 70. But they broadcast it at every Saturday at 6 o'clock. And we also have a huge, thanks to my publisher, who also has a film division, Blue Forge, we also have a YouTube channel, and we have a large library of previous shows with a whole bunch of different individuals that I've interviewed. So if you're interested in doing anything creative, stop by Kitsap Literary Arts and Writers. We don't charge dues or anything. It's all volunteer. And we also are certain venues, like we have booths and tables at the Blackberry Festival, the Kitsap Fair, and other type of venues and situations out there where we can actually get out there and talk to the public and present our wares. So, until next time, if you have the urge, create. Stop by at one of our meetings, meet the people, and see what you can do if you put your mind to it. And with that, hopefully you have a very interesting and productive month and year and are able to create what you want to. And with that, have a very pleasant day and evening. Good day.